Мої вітання всім. Дякую, що долучилися. І перед тим як ми почнемо наш воркшоп лекцію, я би хотів трошечки сказати декілька слів українською, тому що цей воркшоп буде записано на відео, і ми його будемо викладати. І таким чином для людей, які не володіють англійською, тому що він далі продовжуватиметься англійською. Ми додамо опцію, як це генерованих субтитрів. Тому для тих, хто побачив це відео і розуміє, що англійською він може його не дуже зрозуміти, скористайтеся опцією автогенерування субтитрів з автоматичним перекладом. Це зазвичай доволі добре допомагає зрозуміти суть або загальну суть матеріалу, який буде розповідатись. І з цього моменту я перейду на англійську для того, щоб мене розумів і Пол, і ми вже починали наш воркшоп. Hello, everyone. As I said, that don't hesitate to use auto-generated subtitles with auto-translation. And I'm very happy to welcome you and also to introduce our speakers of this workshop. It's Marija Fалконер. Unfortunately, she is not with us in real time. But she will be present. She prepared her contribution to the workshop on the video that will be following after this short introduction. And with us is also Pol Ghill. And just to say that actually it's a great opportunity to say that three of us, me, Paul and Maria, we are. Yes, I'm speaking English. Yeah, I was confirming it. We are not only artists taking part in this project, but also co-curators and co-producers, and that somehow also affected our way of creating the project and shaping the project altogether. And I'm sure that in this workshop you will have opportunity to hear and also to ask about not only photography and video and dance, but also about the aspects of how the process affected creation of a multimedia project and exhibition. Don't hesitate to prepare those questions. And I will be talking just a little, just for the introduction. And for understanding the structure, we will start from the short contribution by Marija Fалконер, who is a leading photographer and editor of the project in general. And then we will continue with Pol Ghill, who is present with us, continuing more about the details of the process. And at the end, we'll have Q&A. And so if you will have any questions, don't hesitate to note them or also drop into the chat, but better to note them. We will have like half an hour, the minimum of Q&A at the end. So we'll have quite enough time to have the answers to your questions and also, to go deeper to certain things that probably will be missed in the introduction and so on. And also you will see by the end of the Pol presentation, we will watch the video that is presented on the exhibition if you didn't see it, because we will comment a lot about this the video part of the project. And after that, there will be the Q&A. So this is the general logic of the whole thing. And here we go. Paul, do you want to say before I start anything before I start?
No. I will mention it in the presentation. Don't want to waste any time. And thank you for coming, and also the people who will be listening to obviously the recording and on YouTube. Please do not hesitate to get in touch with us either through Victor or directly. And I am presenting a photographer's view. I'm not a dancer, but it's been a joy to be with the dance community over the years through Maria.
And we are also happy to have with us today two more participants of the project, Svetlana Oleksiuk and also Larissa Venediktova, just to mention as well that they are also with us. So you can also, if you'll have any questions to the participants, to the dancers, to the dance artists, participants of the project, don't hesitate also to direct to all three of us them. So let's hear the Maria's proposal, and here it starts. Just a second.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not the right.
Yeah, it's above the bottom. Yeah.
It's the last one. And oh,
yeah.
Do you see now the correct?
Yeah.
Hello everyone, Maria here. Thank you so much for inviting Paul and I to this event, and I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you in person. I'm just going to take 10 minutes or so to outline my involvement with this project, and then Paul can elaborate and also tell you about his experiences. Before I begin, I really would like to thank everyone involved, from Victor, who not only performed in the piece, but who was an amazing fixer and producer, all the incredible dancers who inspired us and placed their trust in us, to Gregory Semenchuk, an extraordinary sound artist, Yulia Vaganova, director of the Konenko Museum, and Dmitry Sakuzenko, director of the Lesy Theatre. To all the people who helped document our journey through videos and stills, the soldiers who generously shared their time and allowed us access to their training, to Victor's mum and dad who lent us their car and filled us full of delicious Ukrainian food, to our donors who made it possible for us to pay a small fee to the artists, and of course to Oksana Bashinova and everyone at the National Art Museum of Ukraine for hosting this work and these wonderful events around them. A very quick intro to me then. I'm an image maker that uses still and moving imagery, and I have a special interest in dance and physical theatre and the body. I initially trained as a dancer at the Laban Centre in London in the 1980s, and although I didn't follow a dance performance career, I really do understand how the body is a vehicle for expression. My work then falls roughly into two categories. There's my commercial practice and my own creative practice, but of course there are many overlaps. And like many freelance artists, I also teach, write, exhibit, and give presentations around the UK and abroad. Some of my professional photographic practice involves making promotional imagery for dance companies and organisations, and I worked for a place called Dance Space in Edinburgh for almost 20 years. I was responsible for brochure images, rehearsal shots, as well as the production shots in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And it's that connection that brought me to this project. In March 2022, I attended an online talk at Dance Space, where one of the speakers was Viktor Ruban. Because the Russians had just invaded Ukraine, the original agenda was dropped, and the conversation naturally turned to this dreadful atrocity. At the end of the talk, I asked Viktor, "How do you dance in a war zone?" And he gave an extraordinary response. One of the things he said was that he was finding a way to dance with the problems and the obstacles, not despite them or around them. And this intrigued me. At the end of the session, he mentioned that if anyone was interested in any kind of collaboration, to get in touch. At the time, I thought he was really referring to dancers and choreographers, but I thought I'd get in touch anyway, just to have a chat. To cut a long story short, over the following few weeks, Victor, Paul Hill, and myself continued the discussion. And it wasn't long before we all decided that we'd like to try and answer this question, how do you dance in a war zone, using a combination of movement, sound, and imagery. Now, I'm speaking for myself. Paul will give you his own thoughts later. And there are so many things that I could discuss, but I don't have time, so here are just a few. I asked myself so many questions about getting involved in this project. One of them was why. Personally, I needed to understand why I wanted to make the work. Was it about Ukraine? Was it about me? What were my motives? I also knew that Paul and I weren't in Ukraine to tell your story. It's not ours to tell. So figuring out why we were there was important. The answers I came up with were, firstly, outrage, total outrage at what was happening in Ukraine. Next, curiosity. I wanted to see for myself what this meant to the dancing community. The world press brings us images of the horrors of the fighting. We see this in the newspapers and on the TV. But what we don't see is anything about the regular people in Ukraine, communities like the dancing community. How are ordinary people coping? How are they making a living? What are they doing? What does it mean to try and carry on when you've been invaded? Thirdly, then, I suppose as creative people, we use art to express the things in life that are important to us. Otherwise, what's the point of it? I'm not interested in making pretty pictures or photographing celebrities. I've always been drawn to humanitarian issues in my work, because for me, there's nothing more important than humanity. But I'm not a documentary maker. I use the medium of visual arts to express myself. I use a different kind of narrative, a different form of communication. Of course, it was difficult to know where to start. There were so many unknowns. But we arranged to travel to Ukraine for a preliminary visit, and Victor was amazing at introducing us to lots of people, not just the incredible dancers, but also musicians, photographers, and Yulia and Dmitro from the Konenko Museum and the Lesy Theatre. I was slightly worried about how we might be received in Ukraine. Maybe people would think we were war tourists or there to exploit a horrific situation. But all my fears were allayed immediately as we received such a warm welcome wherever we went. So the two main starting points we had then were movement and location. We asked the dancers to create some movement that related to the question, how do you dance in a war zone? Now, clearly this is a very big question, but we tried to help narrow it down a little bit by explaining that they should just pick one aspect of what this question meant to them. It would and it should be something personal to their experience. They could choreograph something ahead of time or improvise if they preferred. And then they should choose a location that in some way was connected to their experience. This could be a metaphorical reference or a literal one. We spoke to the dancers on Zoom to help prepare as much as possible, but beyond this, we had no big plan. We were just going to see what happened. The dancers were beyond helpful. They really engaged with the project, and we couldn't have asked for more commitment. There was a lot of trust required on both sides. For us, we didn't know how or what the dancers were going to create or how they would be to work with. And the dancers didn't really know us either, and still they took the risk. I think it was difficult for them also because we couldn't explain what we were going to make. We didn't know. We were just figuring it out as we went along. Each dancer, though, as you'd expect, brought their unique movement, quality and experience to the filming. All of it was expressive. We just needed to find a way to photograph and film it to make it work in 2 dimensions. It was incredibly intense filming and photographing every day, making technical and creative decisions quickly and under pressure, thinking on our feet, looking for locations, traveling and maximizing the time available with each dancer. Also, there were hours of downloading in the evenings, copying and storing files, reformatting cards, recharging batteries, and making everything ready for the next day. It may surprise you to hear that at the time of making this work, Paul was 80 years old. I am so proud of him. He gave 100% in energy and commitment, and he kept up with everything, even taking over the driving when we borrowed Victor's dad's car. Time limitations also meant that we had to work quickly when we had a dancer in front of a camera. And bringing the performing arts together with the visual arts really does create some challenges. Making still images or video involves translating a 3D world into a flat two-dimensional one. Everything in the frame must be there for a reason. Everything in the frame has a meaning and must relate to everything else in the frame. And sometimes the 3D world just doesn't translate that well. For example, on location, there could be people wandering into the background, or unwanted signs like fire exit or toilets. Technical things like backlight from windows or backgrounds with clutter. Sometimes backgrounds just don't lend themselves compositionally or because of the colours involved. Sometimes the light was dreadful or just dull and flat, or it was raining, or people in the images had to be kept anonymous. At one point, we were privileged to be able to photograph an actual movement therapy session, which was incredible, but brought about some problems with lighting and camera angles. In these kinds of examples, we weren't operating as a photo shoot. This was a therapy session, so we couldn't change things, add lights, stop and start. We had to keep out of the way and film what we could. It wasn't always easy to solve these things, but the dancers were amazingly flexible and trusted us to make things work. We got around some of these problems in a variety of ways. For instance, using specific framing or changing the vantage point to maybe filming from above or below, sometimes lighting things ourselves with our own lights, or being open to switching locations, communicating and working with the dancers all of the time to make the best decisions about their work and the creative options available. Another consideration then was how to instill layers of meaning into the work. There's always a danger in this kind of work that you'll end up with a piece about dance that just looks like a series of dancers. How do you move beyond that to add context, but without it being literal or cliched? So the whole time we were there, we photographed and videoed things that might help create this context. For instance, the hedgehogs in the street, the soldiers in the supermarkets, which may be normal to you, but to the rest of us is very unusual. The recruitment posters, the phone apps that announce the air raids, anything we saw that could add another layer of meaning to the story. And then for some reason, when we were traveling in the car or on the bus, I was drawn to film the streets. But I overexposed the footage so it looked unreal. Normal life was still going on, but in a slightly disturbing way. So this is an example of how it looked like with normal exposure. And then here we have the overexposed footage. I didn't realize it at the time, but this would become the glue that would hold the piece together. A kind of journey through the streets of Kyiv. So we just made as much footage and as many still images as we could. And when we returned to the UK, I had the task of making something with all of this work. I really didn't know what it was going to be. My biggest fear was that I would let everyone down. I felt this huge responsibility to everyone involved, and I wanted to make something that was worthy of their time and their commitment. It's a bit like creating a dance piece when you put a visual arts piece together. As you work with the material, it starts to show you the way. Quite often it shows you the way not to go, a lot more often, but eventually you figure out the structure and the narrative. It helped enormously to have the CCTV footage from the Kanenko Museum. Thank you, Yulia, for arranging that. It served as very helpful context material, as well as providing a recurring motif. The amazing soundtrack by Grigory Semenchuk also really holds the work together, as well as of course, bringing another layer of meaning and context to the piece. And thank you, Grigory, for your patience and hard work in putting this together with me. There's so much more that I could talk about, but I'm going to leave the rest to Paul. But before I go, I'd really like to thank Victor for playing such a huge role in all of this. Planning, performing, producing, exhibiting. You are an amazing collaborator, Victor. Thank you so much for making all of this happen. Thank you to all of you for making this happen. Our hearts are absolutely with you.
Yeah, as you may feel, Maria took this mission with a lot of commitment and really a lot of involvement, and it's very, very personal. Even the way how she is introducing and speaking, it's the way she was really present throughout both, like all the time when they were coming, actually, and through all the time when we were communicating. But yeah, giving it up to Paul to continue. And I hope you have questions, and I hope you have some thoughts that we'll get to.
Can everyone see? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Oh, good, good. Okay, right. Well, this is me. And this is a photographic compilation. I just love seeing pictures of myself, as you probably know. And this gives you some sort of idea of my sort of activities. But before that, going into a little bit about myself and going on to, if you like, explaining how we tried to make the project. I'd like to echo what Maria has said about the wonderful collaboration with our Ukrainian colleagues and the fabulous warmth and hospitality we received from everyone. Like Maria, I was outraged by the invasion in 2022 and was eager to be a part of the project following the initial discussion with the marvelous Victor. Now, I started off. Oh dear, sometimes this one. Yes, got going. I started off life as a newspaper reporter, and this is me on the left-hand side. Probably you recognize the two guys next to me. I was based in the English Midlands many, many decades ago. I also wrote about pop music as well as news, and reviewed records and interviewed bands like the Beatles here, the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, Dusty Springfield, Cilla Black, amongst others. So after freelancing for local newspapers, I eventually started working regularly for national newspapers like The Guardian and The Observer, photographing important events and famous people in the news. But I always tried to look for something a little different if I could. After freelancing for local newspapers, as I said, I moved more towards teaching. And because it interested me that to make a contribution, I suppose, towards the culture of photographic education, which was changing at this particular period in the UK. Because I gave lectures, public lectures, and wrote articles, and this book in the first edition was in 1982, which was, strangely enough, the first of its type in the UK. The third edition is just recently been out, which is embracing the digital revolution. I got asked to teach. Got invitations to run workshops and so forth, which I obviously did. And as a part of that, I worked with a colleague, an American photographer called Thomas Cooper, in interviewing the movers and shakers of 20th century photography. And the resultant book was Dialogue with Photography, which came out in 1979 and was in, and actually has just gone out of print. So it was 40 years of this book, and it's translated into several languages, as you can see from the top middle one. Anyway, it was a marvelous experience to meet one's own heroes, and that first-hand experience really is very important to me in my photography. Sorry?
All is good.
Okay. Sorry, I heard somebody talk. Yeah, this book was made following the death of my wife in 2006. So you can see that my work is often very personal, but my approach to our time in Ukraine was going to be different. It was very much a collaboration with obviously Maria and Victor, of course, and the marvelous dancers. So being a visitor, you see things that are new, and you go to a new place, like the generators in the street, so different to the UK we had just left behind early in 2023. As Maria said, Victor was an incredible producer, and he set up meetings for us with lots of people, including Yulia at the Kanenko Museum, where the works of art have been taken down from the walls and out of the vitrines after the missiles landed in a park on the other side of the road to the museum in October 2022. And I thought I'd rather, you can see the ghosts here of where the paintings were on the wall, and also the rather lonely Christmas tree, which was probably the last celebration before the invasion at Christmas 2021, I suppose, yes. We started off working in Lviv at the Lesy Theatre, which was a marvelous location, which Maria has referred to. And there is a lot of memorabilia in that building. So there were lots of possibilities, because one of the important things for us was the locations. The choice obviously was up to the dancers first, which we discussed before we arrived. And we had a reconnaissance visit in winter of 2023, or the beginning of 2023. And then we thought the possibilities in some places were better than others, and it was a collaboration. We knew we had to produce something that was creatively interesting and engaging, so we had to be aware of all sorts of possibilities, like Maria referred to, with the way we framed it, the angles we used, what I can talk about as we go through. This is the first shoot that we did with Victor, and he wanted to work in this room at the back of the stage, actually, at the Lesy Theatre, where there was lots of, as I said before, memorabilia from previous eras. He was working with the idea of resistance, and a war was a good way to explore this concept. The locations that we filmed in were decided, as I said before, mutually, but each location was in some way relevant to each dancer's experience of the invasion. And Maria and I, during this process, were making stills as well as videoing, and it was very, very challenging. And we always thought, would we have enough time? The next shoot was with Maria Salo, and Maria was interested in working in corridors and staircases at the theatre. And much of the work doesn't have a simple literal meaning. This is a little clip from it. You get an idea of the context. And obviously this is very different to, this is like the rehearsal. This is very different to what we ended up with in the final video installation. Maria expressed some of her anxiety about the situation using repetitive movements. She said that there were many new routines that needed to be learned, special bags being packed when you go out, awareness of where the closest bomb shelters were. So repetition and routine were evident in her movement. And there could be a kind of safety in repetition, even if it's a perception rather than real safety. Now back to Victor. Again in the theatre, but underneath in the shelter of the bomb shelters, which are in the cellars of the theatre. To be as prepared as we could, we took 2 video lights. So we turned off the main light and just lit Victor with on a series of chairs at the back. It was really, as I say, quite challenging working in some of these spaces, and particularly for Victor at this moment, trying to obviously come up with an idea that would visually reflect what he wanted us to capture, and also what we wanted to create as well. Our next setup in Lviv was with Alla, who, although she's a performer, she runs a community dance center, and they often use the skate park, and that's where Alla decided she would like to work. So this is the skate park, and you know, our dancers arriving, and you can see something going on in the background, an exercise class, which I'm sure you're more familiar, rather unusual from a British perspective to see such things. But it was really quite an interesting space, which because there was a young boy using the skate park to, understandably, with his skateboard, who we had to perhaps suggest that he might like to leave and go back to school, but probably wasn't appreciated what we asked him to do. But anyway, we managed to get on and create a piece. This is just the contextual backstage footage that we made when we were also preparing for the final shoot that you'll see in the video. These are some of the stills. As I said, we were taking stills and making video, which was not always easy. We were, you know, we had 11 consecutive days, 16-hour days, so we had to download, we had to edit, we had to obviously consider what we were going to do the next day, and so on. So it was pretty full on, as you can well imagine. Next, Mikita in Lviv. And he and Alla work in this studio, dance teaching and massage sessions. So when we looked at the space, we wondered what we could actually do with it. One of the things that we particularly liked was the red floor, but that was fraught with problems too, because it was reflecting the light coming from both ends of the room, and it became like a tunnel. So what we decided was to persuade Mikita that this might be a very good sort of background to the movement improvisation that he wanted to do, which was to do, he started off unclothing himself. He started off with black costume, so it was really a very effective combination. And just noticed, actually, when I was putting this together, we were also wearing, you know, red and black as well. That was purely coincidental. Now back to Alan, this is quite interesting because Ala was reticent. She didn't particularly want to do a single piece. She was interested in the community aspect. But Maria, being Maria, persuaded her that, you know, we would like her to do a solo and as a separate shoot and a more personal perspective than what was evident in the group session. Luckily, she agreed. And so we spent a bit of time looking for a good space, again, in the Leslie Theatre. I discovered a room that I thought would be great on our reconnaissance visit, but I couldn't find it when we came back for the second visit later in 2023. And but because it didn't have a door, it had a roll blind shutter. And then I realized that what was behind this roll blind shutter maybe that I found in the building, maybe the room that I couldn't find, and it was, which was marvelous. It took a bit of opening, but we got there in the end, and it proved to be a fantastic space for Ala to do her piece. And really, we didn't know what it was very much last minute, so we didn't really know what she was going to do, and certainly didn't know that she was going to wear this extraordinary outfit, including the swimming goggles. But we knew it was going to be special, and indeed it was. And she used the metaphor of diving and going underwater and produced a piece of movement that was absolutely spellbinding, and which hopefully you'll see in the final video, and one of the most surprising shoots of our trip. The second session with Maria, again inside the theatre, was something that I think she was very, very interested in trying to make a piece around. The empty chairs and the absence of people and activity were both a literal and I suppose a metaphorical representation of what was going on at that time in Maria's world. But the lighting was terrible. It was brown, it was spotlights on the wall, it was extremely difficult. And so vantage point, again, as it was with work with Makita, finding a ladder and looking down was extremely useful, and having a balcony here in this theatre, which was used originally or quite relatively recently, as a theatre for the military, was perfect to get that vantage point that we wanted to get. And Maria was quite interested in getting some group work together, improvisations with the group. So Victor arranged with the other dancers from Lviv to do this group piece with all four together being involved. They chose an outdoor location and improvised around the theme, like trust, safety, and uncertainty, using the concrete slabs like islands not to fall off. I kept shouting, "Remember, there is 100-meter drop between the slabs." And it's a really interesting piece of improvisation, which is extraordinary considering that they hadn't really been there or done anything in this space before. Now, you heard Maria talk about Victor's mum and dad. Well, here they are. When we arrived at Kiev, we went to meet them and had some marvelous food. And they are amazing people and so warm and hospitable. And as Maria said, Victor's dad lent his car to us for a week and entrusted me with driving it, which was very brave of him. But the car was quite old and interesting to drive. and it developed a serious wheel problem, but nothing that could be sorted by a scary drive across the city to a backstreet garage with Maria hanging out of the back window to see if the wheel was still on or not. Anyway, it stayed on. We got it mended, which is good. The empty Kanenko Theatre in Kyiv was used for our first session with Larissa. As many of you will know, she's an extraordinary dancer with an incredible ability to express herself through movement. When we first met Larissa, she told us that the thing she was most afraid of was the blackouts. And she had to move along the walls in the dark using her hands. And we tried some of the ideas with that idea of moving along walls and hands and so forth. And it didn't quite work out with the lighting that we had thought would be ideal. So we decided that we would start playing with shadows using just one of the lights, like a sort of a huge torch. And it gave us some wonderful material. We moved into a room nearby, which was very different, which had a big chandelier casting light and shade on a boarded up window. And Maria used a handheld smartphone camera on a gimbal that keeps the camera steady as you move around. Really invaluable for a lot of the work that we did, particularly for dance photography. So we then moved on to work with the empty vitrines. So this is the Kanenko Museum in normal times, and this was after the raid, with all the work taken out of the vitrines and off the wall, as I said before. So, but they had that marvelous red light still within the vitrines, and so it occurred to us that this would be a wonderful location for Larissa to do a piece in around the empty vitrines, as you can see again in the final video. And so these are some of the pictures that we took, the still pictures in those vitrines. Now, this is Svetlana. I'm glad to see, like Larissa is in the audience, and she works at a local university, and she wanted to work in an historical environment where there were some Ukrainian monuments that were significant to her, but the location had its difficulties. It's a beautiful park and very popular, and the weather was marvelous when we were there, but lots of walkers obviously would end up in the background. So we don't quite know how this guy slipped into the frame, but somehow he managed it and seemed oblivious to the fact that he was in our shot. Anyway, so we worked next with Thaisa, and who comes from Irpin. And so she chose this bombed out apartment block for one of the dance sessions that she had prepared. And here we have two pictures of Thaisa preparing and rehearsing for her piece. And so we tried one or two ideas, as you do. This is to give you an idea of the experimentation that had to take place, and with sort of rehearsals, thinking what's working, what isn't working, and then Maria had to make the choice. Sometimes some interesting material didn't make the final cut, as always. And this is outside the build. That was outside the building. This is inside. But it was that collaboration, that form of a work, developing ideas, evolving when we were in actual locations and actually working together. This is truly an important part of the collaboration aspect. So one of the places that Thaisa wanted to use location was this car park that was where all the bombed out cars had been deposited after the raid on Irpin. And so it was a marvelous location, as you can imagine. And as we were filming, we heard a military band, and we turned around and saw this procession. It was the funeral of a soldier. And as we turned back, this was Thaisa's expression. Which was particularly poignant for her, and as her uncle was buried a week earlier, and she hadn't been able to attend his funeral. So this became as a wonderful signature image for the project. Now, Victor is also a volunteer soldier and has practiced drills and wanted to show us what he had to do as part of his volunteer training, and also to use that as a piece that he could contribute to the final work. But another aspect of Victor's, that probably those who know him, is as an organizer and producer. And he wanted us to make some filming of him in his office, which, because of all the work he had to do there, and fundraising and voluntary work. But as I think Victor will probably agree, like most offices, it's pretty boring visually. So Maria persuaded him to reduce it to a desk and chair with a clean background and work on movement instead. So I filmed from the front, and Maria used the smartphone to film him from above. And because the movement revolved around the many hours of typing they had done, as well as the inevitable frustration and worry that he'd been experiencing, keeping a business going, being in a country that had been invaded. So he wanted to convey that in a way. And it's not really easy, but when you see the work in the video, I think it comes off very well. I mean, there isn't anyone in Ukraine who hasn't been traumatized, as you will all know, to some extent by the invasion. And this is Ludmila, who is, as you probably know, is head of movement therapy at a local Kyiv university, and also works with individuals to help them manage their trauma. And that often includes soldiers who are back from the front line. But for obvious reasons, we couldn't photograph a soldier in a therapy session. But Christina here allowed us to photograph her movement therapy session with Christina. And here is a sort of a snippet from the session. It's unedited footage to just give you a little idea of the environment. And but as you can imagine, visually, it's quite difficult. It's quite slow. It's internal. You don't know what's going to happen. There are all sorts of things that you have to consider as well, photographically speaking, from points of lighting and movement and so forth. But like a lot of the sessions that we had and the setups, we didn't know what was going to happen. We evolved it ourselves, and you can see the lighting goes dark and light because the sun comes in, goes out. So these are technical things, and probably you may not have noticed them, but we were obviously very aware and had to be factored into the final editing, which obviously Maria did brilliantly. Now, this was our second session with Larissa. And but unfortunately, it was raining. But we started off the day going to a bridge where she thought would be a good location. But the security turned us away from the bridge as it was a site of significance or some expression like that. And also they warned us that the day before an Italian journalist had been at a similar site of significance and had been shot by a sniper and ended up in hospital. So we eventually went to this piece of wasteland in the outskirts of Kiev. And so these are some stills of the shoot that we did with Larissa and her gun, which obviously surprised us. Like we had lots of surprises, but particularly with all the volunteers having to pay for their uniforms and their guns and their ammunition and so forth, and that came as a bit of a surprise to us, but showed the sort of commitment that was very evident from the people who were having to defend their country. There's Christina, who runs, as you I'm sure will know, most of you will know, one of the biggest dance companies in Kiev for taking young people up to 18, I think, when they may go on to pursue a career in dance. But one of the things that really surprised us was on the top floor of her studio, she had this storeroom full of donated clothes and food, all sorts of things that people had sent in, and she distributed, including this missile that had come down, which went to auction, like many of the others, which were bought by apparently rich Americans, which was, quite a surprise. But one of the other most important things that came out of our session with Christina, this is how things evolve. Unexpected things happen, is that she was saying that she was also having to teach soldiers how to look after themselves, because some of the volunteers obviously were not very young, but also were not used to the rigors of warfare and been able to be the sort of defense line, even though they were volunteers. So they had to have good training, and the physical training was very, very important, because when you go down on your knees, you could injure yourself, you can't roll very effectively, and so forth. So in combination with that was the special forces, who actually came to demonstrate unarmed combat techniques and so forth to in this case, the dancers. So that was a sort of a reciprocal arrangement, which which was this is just a clip from this sort of session. Yeah, you could see that that the instructors really were very serious about how they were the information that they were imparting. This was remarkable for us, because seeing all these things was quite a revelation. I mean, we said, how do you dance in a war zone, which of course was the title of the piece. That's the original question. But how do you survive? How do you prepare for fighting off? How do you defend your country against invaders? How do you defend democracy and freedom? So one of the good things that the Special Forces guys, in conjunction with Christina, it was to give us access to a rifle range, and where the training is outdoors, a polygon, And so so this with professional soldiers. This is not a professional soldier, but it's quite interesting that some of the instructors at the polygon had just come from the front line and were sniped. Some of them were snipers, and this sniper said, "Would you like to have a go to me?" And said,
if you want this stuff, you can control.
Oh yeah, I've got it. Yeah, okay.
Make a different zoom. And right now I'm triggered to file.
Okay.
So you can press trigger and it will be file.
yes, so that was quite interesting session. I'll just go back to that again. The interesting thing that we found out, there were great people there at the polygon. We really had, I mean, it was serious, but the humanity and the humor and the camaraderie was great to observe, and in some senses in a small way to be a part of. But we found out that one of the sniper's colleagues said that he and his wife are both snipers and had just come back from the front line, but she turned out to be a much better shot than him. So that was quite interesting. Our final shoot in Kyiv was in the park. I was in a park which is obviously fraught with problems that sort of people getting into the background, wearing, cyclists wearing lycra and so on. But the dancers here in Kyiv really put together a very interesting improvisation. Again, they were really, showed how good and talented they are, because they made up these movements and these sessions and improvs really so brilliantly. It was really up to us to get interesting angles and to make sure that we obviously didn't get people in the background, but also to make sure that the work that was going on, that was the movements were recorded. And that's really quite important, because we have to, we took a lot of other material, contextual material, which was really very important, because the one thing with making video, which is primarily one of the prime things that we obviously had to do in our sessions, was that you need a lot of material to work with to make an interesting, even a short video. So consequently, we were looking for other images that would fit into the video more, as well as sometimes occasionally for their own sake, that I've just shown you, that I photographed and Maria photographed. And I think that's quite important, that when one's making a work like this, to keep focus, because you can get very distracted, because there is so much that was of interest to us, that to keep our mind on making the video and the stills of each photographer, the portraits, if you like, of some of the sessions, we knew were going to be part of the exhibition and on the wall, as you will see in the museum in Kyiv. So we had to keep our mind on two things, but we had such a good time. We really enjoyed ourselves. It was extraordinary and stimulating. But we had to leave. Fond farewells, getting into the overnight sleeper, hugging them, and the food, a mountain of food that Ludmilla insisted in giving us. She bid us farewell on the overnight train, and of course the inevitable, long waits on the border, passport controls and so forth, which makes everything much more complicated. And in fact, from a non-Ukrainian point of view, like we had, was a strange phenomenon to have all of these elements of seeming at times normality going on, but being reminded that by these sort of passport controls, by the installations and that are around in the cities, that a war is actually going on. And our task now, or has been, is to find ways to disseminate the work, to give it an audience by exhibiting it as widely as possible. As Maria said, the first exhibition was at the Edinburgh International Festival, which is the world's biggest arts festival, which was great to be able to do that. And some of you were involved with that when we did a Zoom. But it's been exhibited in England and so far, two places so far, and featured in the Times of London newspaper and other publications. We are so excited also now that the people of Ukraine are now able to see the fruits of our collaboration in Kyiv and Lviv. And also, which I think pleases us a great deal, that we're able in some sort of way to be able, through the work that we've made, to show the people of Ukraine what wonderful, talented contemporary dancers you have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bringing, I hope it brings quite a lot of details already, and I see that it's not many of us here, but still, and I wanted to ask to those who are with us, do you need to see the video, or probably you already have seen it? Just to understand like about the timing, because we are, so we have enough time. And it's a question.
I have seen it, actually. Yeah.
Olga, Anna, Irina.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen it.
Uh-huh.
I also haven't seen the video.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go through it, and it will be also the time to have maybe some questions noted. And like this, we will finish at 4:40. With it like 10 minutes delay because we started a bit later on. So if you will need to go, like to leave sharp, don't hesitate to ask the question first and then continue, and maybe to see the answers to other questions already on the video recording. Let's do then video. I will just scroll the beginning. No, let's do it properly. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And
Just
any,
in case we are here.
you're still here. Any questions?
Maybe to Anna or to Olga or Irina, do you have any questions? Because I do have to Paul, but let's start with yours. Or Larissa,
No,
if you have.
I don't have any questions. Just thank you very much. It's a great feeling. I'm very glad that I had and thank you, Victor, for organizing this. And yeah, just amazing, very touching video, full of emotions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, I would like to take this opportunity to invite you, if you will have a chance to see the exhibition in National Art Museum. It's still running until 17th of August. And if you are closer to Lviv, or it's easier for you to get to Lviv, for example, we'll have also this project exhibited there in Gnat Chodkevich Palace from 9th of September till 12th of October. So really very, very soon. And why I'm inviting to see the exhibition, because it's 20 stills plus video, but under each still there is a quote of each artist involved. So it's easier to see also like what was the like focal point for each, or maybe like reference or the frame for their work that you can see on the video or on the photo. Because Paul and Maria, they shared a bit of elements already, but when you see it like this, it's there are other layers of senses appearing somehow.
And also one of the things that has happened, which has pleased us, was that we have able to raise some money, because as Victor was saying, there are placards on the wall with the statements and so forth, but also a way of people contributing and donating money to what is the charity, Victor?
It's there is a QR code on each also quote that you can donate to, that will be distributed among the artists of this project. And we were helped also by a charitable organization, Impulse Transformation Platform. So it's like part of the money that was fundraised by Paul and Maria, and partly it's also this NGO that allocated funds. So we were able to print out the stills and prepare all the logistic costs here in Ukraine to show it. Yeah, just to say, but you can also contribute to support the artists. Like
I think from our point of view, what has happened is the tremendous effect that seeing the work that that the dancers produced has had because of the emotion that it entailed and reflected the inner souls of the dancers. Really touched people, has affected people in the UK. We've seen the exhibition. It's not just a tribute to particularly Maria, the way that she's put the video together, and it has really moved people, and that was our intention, to make people, not to document it, as Maria said. We're not documentary. My background is early on in my career is more documentary, of course, but it was a work of expression and solidarity, and about the human condition and the human frailty and the awful effects that man can impose on the fellow citizens of the world.
Svetlana says that she has a question to you, Paul.
Yeah, if I may. There is just well, one question, but it's quite may Okay, well, I just ask I know that there were different exhibitions also in UK that were based on the how to dance in the war zone, or maybe it was another title of it. I don't know exactly, because I followed you on social medias, but maybe not so. I mean, maybe I could miss something. And my question is whether the concept of the exhibition was changing, why and how. I mean, that at least the photos the exhibition in Ukraine is based on are not are the final version, yeah, but there were some previous ones. And how did you choose them? And why did you finish with this version? Yeah, and yes, and about this concept. So, what was it about? Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry.
Well, the reason there, I think what you're saying, there are more pictures in the Ukrainian exhibition than there were in the English one. Is that what you're saying?
And well, maybe I'm mistaken, but Victor said that previously there were more pictures, so that were
Yes,
not 20 but more.
The 20 was the maximum that we were going to have in an exhibition.
Okay.
Yeah. We had 15 in the UK, and that was dictated by space, by logistics.
Okay.
And so, but there's more room in Kyiv. So I think there are 5 more. There are 20. There are 5 more in the. Is that right, Victor? In the Kyiv show? Yeah. So that was good, because that's really where we wanted the work to be seen, obviously, as much in Ukraine as it has been seen in the UK. And so it was governed by logistics and expense. But there are more pictures. Yes, there are more pictures.
And maybe, I don't know if there is any clear answer to this, but maybe you can explain how they were chosen, because for me it was quite unexpectedly well, I didn't expect that these photos will be in the final version. Yeah, maybe just
so what photographs did you think would be in the final version?
I don't have my I don't know, cast of photos, but I was just there were a lot of them, and it was interesting for me why this one, for example, the photo, and some of them I really skipped while going through, but when they are all together, I feel this wholeness, integrity of the exhibition. Yeah, but for me it was this process of choosing is interesting, because I cannot grasp it now. Yeah, I cannot understand really how did you do that. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't based on any theoretical or literal rationale. I think it was we wanted, as you see, everyone's represented in the Kyiv show, and so we wanted the pictures that we thought were the most powerful. Now, this is very subjective, but there's 2 of us, so at least if it had been my choice, I might have chosen something different, and Maria also. So that was, we had to have a discussion about that, but my opinion is that you don't make art by committee, and so that it was just a subjective response. It wasn't thought out in theoretical terms, except that visceral responses is just as important a theory as anything else.
And just to say to the others who were not into the artistic process, each of us received like the bunch of like 50 photos from the process from Maria and Paul. And like, of course, we were shooting for almost 2 weeks. and there is a lot of photo footage. So there was a pre-selection to this smaller amount that each of us received separately for themselves within their shooting. And then from that, there was a selection of those 20 photos that you may see in the exhibition. So like there is much more of the photos that went through these pre-selections. And it totally makes sense for me, Paul, what you say about the visceral response. And I was not intervening into this choosing process. It was only Maria and Paul that were choosing the final 20 that is presented in Kiev at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously we're experienced, but I've done quite a lot of curatorial work over my many years of working life, and so I'm used to dealing with it, but it never I can never apply a precise theory to what has governed my choice, other than instinct and intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe Anna, maybe you have, or Larissa. And Irina wrote us in the chat that very grateful for the work. Thank you, Irina, for nice words of support. And yeah, it was a lot of work on the go. That's true.
Yeah.
Anna?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for the project. The work is really sensible and fragile, and the arts and the dance in it makes the emotion guided towards the resolution, you know. So it's really nice to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one question. Maybe I don't know if it will be the final one for the workshop, but I promised it to the people on social media, and it will be if you can say something very precise, how the process of making of in Ukraine of this project affected your work as a photographer or as a curator. Like, do you have something that really new appeared, or maybe changed your way of thinking or working, or I don't know, like from this experience in Ukraine?
Yeah, I mean, there are one things that I think, and I was, as well as the visual, the things that were unusual I hadn't seen before, and somehow would reflect or be a metaphor for the situation. But it's very much a personal response to the pictures that I took. Obviously, Maria, would be thinking, when it comes to the movement and the dance, because of her experience, that she would have a vision, and it's very much her project. I was just there to help as much as I could, and because it had to be two-handed. It was difficult enough just with two people, and obviously with other people's help, like Victor's, to put the thing together, put the whole project together. But what I learned was more really from talking to the people. It's like when we did work with the refugees in 2016 who were coming over from Turkey to Europe and going through Greece, up through the Macedonian border and so on. By that first-hand experience, you learn so much more. You don't have the whole picture, you don't have the full picture, but you have a better picture of what is happening in situations and with human conflict than you do when you're sitting on your sofa in front of the television. And so that first-hand experience is what I always tell my students. You can't think photographs. You have to be there. Photography foregrounds your involvement with the world. And that is so important. But also listening to people like Larissa saying, why are they frightened? Why don't they want us to join NATO? What are they frightened? Why are they frightened of Putin? And also the most important thing that I feel that came from the consensus of what people were saying was this was not about Ukraine alone. This was about democracy and freedom. And that's the thing that sticks in my mind, as well as the personal sacrifices that people have made and the heinous way that some human psychopaths can act. Culture is has many advantages. But there is also an opportunity for it to be twisted, to bring about things that are not supportive of humanity. And so the other thing, I suppose, that is a wider observation, that all of these various unjust and murderous activities have been perpetrated by men. That the problem with the world is masculinity.
Sorry, could you please repeat once more the last sentence?
The main problem that we have in the world is caused by men. The problem is masculinity. We have riots going on at the moment in the UK, small things. And they are perpetrated by men. Domestically, men want to control everything. They're losing control. They don't like it. They'll fight against it. And that is the underpinning problem in the world. Obviously, there's climate change. There's all sorts of other things. There's inequalities. But all of the moves that have been made, the territorial prerogatives, the cultural shifts that are bad, have been made by men. Men is the problem with the world.
I have one like double question. If nobody else has any questions, Larissa, maybe you have a question.
No, I have not. I have one comment, but later maybe, please.
How this project changed your seeing of dance and war, because it's dancing in the war zone. So my question would be, how did it, if it changed somehow your not image, but like your feeling or understanding or seeing of dance and the war, of both, of each?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, my involvement with dance is through Maria, basically. So because of working with her, I've absorbed a lot about contemporary dance that I never knew about and really appreciated, physical theatre and so on. And but how you interpret anything, I found it interesting to see how people were, through movement, through the body, were representing inner thoughts that to do in a culture or in a country that I have, haven't visited before or know much about. So that communicated with me. I think with my eyes. And I've always said to Maria, she thinks with her body and feels with her body. And I think the dancers that I saw represent that point of view very well. My role was really to try and help bring a visual component to the project. Obviously, Maria is very experienced in that, and some of the people who were involved are very visually aware, having how to put things together, and have visual things in mind. But the important thing is, as we said right at the beginning, that we were making a visual piece of work, which involves sound, involved dance, but of course, the predominant element was the visual.
And what about the war? what changed for you about the perception of the war?
I could, other than what I observed around me, you know, when we were there, the physical things, you know, the air raids, the blackouts, all the elements of defense, of course, that Maria alluded to. Yes, of course, you saw that, and I photographed them, and we photographed them. But also the soldiers, meeting the volunteer soldiers. I had a long conversation with a doctor who was 70 at the polygon, you know, about what it was like to be a 70-year-old doctor in, you know, this situation. So I was, my impression of war, in a sense, was non-existent, because I'm not at the front line. I didn't know what, you know, what was going on. I didn't feel it in so closely. I've been in situations that were like in Northern Ireland. So I've been in conflict situations, of course, and not in the same way the riots in Greece with regard to the refugees in conflict. So I've observed it at first hand. So, but that wasn't visible, really. I was surprised at the normality that everyone got on. They've almost normalized the situation and bravely got on with their lives, which is the only way you can that you can operate, really, is to get on with the situation. I've been in situations where I've had to deal with sudden death or sudden illness with my loved ones, and you just get on with it. You just get on with caring and supporting, or whatever you have to do after you've got over the initial visceral kick in the guts. You get on with it. And the people in Ukraine, in my observations, and I'm sure it's different, you know, if you're an insider, have got on with their lives in a very brave and almost a way that has no alternatives.
Thank you. Larissa, you had a comment that you...
Yes, I just would like to say thank you again. And this is a comment about one more thanks for pointing out the dance in Ukraine, actually. And it's an unexpected result for me that you just did it. I mean, this dance in National Art Museum, it's genius. Thanks.
Well, thank Victor.
Yeah, thank Victor.
Yeah, of course. But no, yeah, I mean, we started off with at the dance center in the National Centre in Edinburgh, dance space, which I'm sure some of you know about. So that was obvious, but it's gone into other spaces, and which I think is really good for people to see it, and also to see how you photograph dance, how dance can be an important part, particularly with the video, because I think dance is so much about movement, and show that dance is about movement. It's not about pirouettes and arabesques. It's about the body and about movement. And it shouldn't show us something. It should say something.
I will join Larissa to thank you for really making it happen, because somehow like this meeting of different perspectives that we managed to achieve within this project, I think this is the most precious and most, I don't know, most interesting and most valuable about this project. And I agree that it's quite particular and quite precious also seeing of like variety and diversity of Ukrainian dance and representation of Ukrainian dance to the audience abroad. And I really hope for more of these project exhibitions abroad, internationally, and like we continue working on that. And I know that you are doing it as well. Partly, where will be the next one in UK?
Yeah, we've got a room, a big, it's very interesting. It's an old courthouse, which it's only one small courthouse. It's a room which we've been given at the Worksworth Festival, which is a weekend festival of visual arts. And that's in September. And we showed the video at the Buxton Festival, which has become a big festival, not as big as Edinburgh or anything like that, but it's quite a substantial, that's been shown. So the video is shown, but that was in a film sort of a festival, part of the major festival. So, but it was good to see it on the big screen. It really stands up very well on a big screen, really. Okay, it is an installation which should be seen in a gallery, you know, on a screen, plasma screen, whatever. But we have ideas for making it a multiple screens and things like that, which we hope somebody will be interested in giving us the space to do that in. And but the one good thing is that like with all work, it now exists. It is now real. So we can do with this whatever we want. The pictures are there. The pictures are concrete, tangible. The video is there. We have got a big monitor now, which we show it on in exhibitions. So all of these things will not be forgotten. They're part of history now.
And also thanks to National Art Museum of Ukraine that is hosting this exhibition and also presenting it now in Kiev. Somehow we are working also on our side from Ukraine. There is a potential possibility to show it in Israel and also in Germany. So like looking forward for next dates and next opportunities to see this project abroad. Thank you, Paul, for sharing your perspective and your scope and your experience and understanding of this project. Thanks, Maria, as well. I hope you will see this video when you will have a time and a moment. It's so much of heart and of your eyes and of your thoughts in this project, and it's really beautiful. Thanks also to all the artists involved, and I'm really happy to be among this beautiful group of artists, Ukrainian artists that are in this project. Алла Шляхова, Марія Сало, Лариса Венедиктова, Світлана Олексюк, Христина Шашкарьова, Людмила Мова, Христина Слободянюк, Таїсія Тимофєєва, а також Григорій Семенчук. Я сподіваюся, нікого не забув. Здається, нікого не забув. Тому що це дуже незвичне поєднання, об'єднання українських митців. I'm even shifted to Ukrainian, just reminding the names. I'm really happy to be together with my colleagues because it's really incredible, very interesting combination of different artists together. And I'm really wishing for this project to continue and really to be seen more and more. And
let's hope we work together again sometime.
Definitely.
Svetlana, can you hold the baby up?
Greetings to Philip.
That's great. I must take a picture for Maria. But that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
If anybody else is watching this on YouTube, I'm sorry about that.
That will be so, yeah. And, so I will stop recording. Thank you everyone for joining us and for staying with us for during all the time. It's 1 hour 40 now of or even 1 hour 50. No, 1 hour 40.
Yeah, it's nearly two. Yeah, let's say 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours. And I hope that the people that will be watching this on YouTube also will stay and spread the word further.
Thank you, all my friends in Ukraine, and have a good life and have a safe life, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Very much. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.